to Beyond the Podium program, and I usually don't stand here for very long at all. And the reason I'm standing behind the podium right now is because this is being filmed, and they asked me to give the camera a little bit of FaceTime. So those of you watching, this is your FaceTime, because I'm going to be leaving the podium almost immediately, as we have a lot of material to cover, and this is not the place to do it. So, with no further ado, let me start. Dog talk. You may think that's how dogs communicate. You couldn't be more wrong. This is a joint presentation between myself and my wife. I'm over on the left. My wife, his business, is over on the right. And that's the signal for stand. This is my wife. Why am I introducing her to you? It's because when it comes to solving animal behavioral issues, dog behavioral issues, there's the person you need to talk to. She's the expert. In fact, she's wearing her Art Deco dog that we've named after our dog, Kane. We have two dogs of our own that you'll meet a little bit later. Thank you very much, love. So, as I said, wait for the signal. Wait for the signal. There we go. Sit. Good girl. Good doggy. Good doggy. I always like to begin with something humorous in all of my talks. This one is appropriate, I think, on the subject. For those of you on cats, no insult intended, but of course, just remember 5,000 years ago, we used to worship cats as gods, and for those of you who don't know, they haven't forgotten. Right, who are we? I'm an ex-research scientist. My wife is an ex-business analyst. We now have over 100 years experience in handling a dog because of the high throughput through our business. We are dog behaviorists. Our business is looking after other people's dogs when they're away on vacation or just for daycare. So we are cage-free. That means the dogs are running free all the time. We have a changing pack, which is a very useful training tool, as you will hear if you come to the Q&A workshop. If we were to rename the business, we'd call it Dogs in the House, because that's what it is. But we are Area K9. And yes, we live with dogs. This was a promo picture taken by a local newspaper. There's my wife, and there's Abel, our Shetland sheepdog, and myself with Kane. That's our other Shetland sheepdog. And yes, they're brothers. In the front here is Toffee, the record holder for the longest stay at Area K9, being a little bit over 4 months. So where did dogs come from? They came from a common ancestor called Hesperocyon. Hesperocyon is shown in the top two panels. Over on the left is a fossil. Over on the right is a reconstruction of what Hesperocyon probably looked like, a ferret-looking creature. A very successful species has been 40 million years ago, it lived for 11.5 million years. Compare that to ourselves. We've only been on the planet for a couple of thousand, 200,000 years. So Hesperocyinae there, a number of species evolved into the Borophaginae. They're all extinct, and we have the Caninae here, where our dogs and wolves and foxes are. So out of the 214 species over that 40 million year history, we've only got 37 with us today. I've listed a few here, shown you a few pictures of some that you may not be too familiar with. Well, the oldest partially domesticated dog that we have found, it was in 2013 that this work was done through DNA, was in the Altai Republic here, which is in the middle of Asia, in Siberia area, and this was 33,000 years ago. This line is extinct. These dogs don't exist anymore, but there is evidence that we started domesticated these animals, the ancestors of our dogs and wolves, 33,000 years ago. And what would it have looked like? A bit like the Beringian wolves here. They're extinct too, but there's a reconstruction of them. Those of you that have seen Alpha, the film, we were in that time, our social society was hunter-gatherer at that point, and this is when these animals would have been on their road to domestication. But of course, if you watch that film, it's got absolutely nothing to do with what we think the truth is. but it's not a bad film. So what happened? Well, there's this ancestor here that evolved into grey wolves. Don't think of that ancestor as being a wolf. It wasn't a wolf. It was some other creature. And in this period here, some 27 to 33,000 years ago, man started to domesticate these animals. Somehow they formed a relationship with them. Maybe they were eating off the rubbish that had been left behind as the hunter-gatherer people moved on, and some of the friendly ones got tamed, and there we go on from there. These became what we term village dogs. We still have village dogs today, but as man realized the benefit of these animals to their society, we started to breed them for specific purposes, which is what we've got today. This is the purebreds that we've got today. This domestication has happened more than once, at least twice, maybe more, we're not sure. Most of the dogs today come from the Far East domestication. This is Africa. These are all different dogs. This is not pictures of the same dog. These are what we term village dogs. They're just breeding in an uncontrolled manner. You may have seen dogs like this in the Caribbean as well. That's another place that you can see animals like this. How do we know this might be true? It's through this experiment here, the Siberian silver fox experiment, which took place beginning in 1959 in the Soviet Union under the leadership of Dmitry Belyaev, shown in the bottom panel here in 1959. And what were they doing? They were breeding these animals for one feature alone, and that was tameness. If the animal showed that it was amenable to being handled, it was kept in the breeding program. And in fact, they're tamed today. You can buy them today. It's one of the ways they keep financing this. Ludmila Trut is the current overseer of this program. You can get one of these for $10,000 or so, but they're still classified as wild animals. In the middle, we've got the gold standard Siberian silver fox, but you can see as it went through this breeding program for one feature alone, which is tameness, other things started to change. That looks like a border collie. It's not. It's a Siberian silver fox. Muzzle shape started to change slightly. Ear shape started to change, as well as the behavior. And then we got this beautiful blue one up there. They don't sound anything like a dog. This is what they sound like. And that last sound is not the handler slapping the fox, it's actually the sound that the fox makes. So we have currently over about 400 breeds. They're divided into 4 categories. There's the working, there's the sight scent hound, and there's herding, working, all of them there. But some research into their DNA has found that there's at least 23 clades. What's a clade? A clade is a group of animals and has a common ancestor. And all of these dogs shown in this picture here have a common ancestor. So the thinking is maybe we need more than just 4 categories for dogs. This is really work in progress because they've only studied 161 breeds. That's almost 1,400 dogs. And this is how they stack up with each other, the 23 clades there. So where you see a common color like red, then there is one common ancestor there. Let me zoom in on one, the green one here. And the reason I zoom in on that one is because this is the Shetland sheepdog. These are our dogs related to the collie. But interestingly, in this one with the common ancestor is the Irish wolfhound, which is, of course, the biggest dog there is. So this all comes from one common ancestor. So much more work to be done on that. What is a dog? Well, look at this picture here, all the different physical shapes and sizes. And indeed, here, the Great Dane and the Chihuahua. How does the Chihuahua know the Great Dane is a dog? You come down from outer space, you look at these 2 animals. Do they look anything like the same? Of course not. But the Chihuahua knows the Great Dane is a dog and probably knows the Great Dane is going to be a pushover as well, because small dogs tend to be a little bit more assertive than big dogs. All of these differences you see here in that picture over on the right are explained basically by 7 genetic regions in the dog's DNA. Not true for us. There's a lot more different regions in the DNA that defines our physical shape. They've got very good species differentiation. They know a dog is a dog. They know a snake is a snake, a bird is a bird, a squirrel is a squirrel. Their species differentiation is so good that they treat children differently from adults, which is very important. Also, while I'm on the field of genetics, all these coats here are governed by 3 genes. So the Chinese crestus there, the hyalus, is just a single mutation in one of those genes to give that effect. It's not the color, it's just the coat that is defined in those 3 genes. This complex title, of course, my job to decode that for you. This was published in 2017, and they found that in the dog's DNA there is a sequence that's identical to the sequence in humans that suffer from Williams syndrome. One of the symptoms of Williams syndrome is they're hypersocial. They're in your face, they think you are their best friend, and they treat you accordingly. They may even want to cuddle you straight off the bat because they're so friendly. They've got no inhibitions whatsoever. So what does that mean when we compare that to the dog's DNA? Basically, it means the dogs are hardwired to be friendly. And if a dog isn't friendly, who's responsible? We are. Also on genetics, if we compare a wolf population to a purebred dog population, we find that in the wolf population, which is natural selection, there are far less DNA mutations. It's 22% of double-strand mutations. We find less in the wolf population through natural selection than we do in the purebred dog population. So we are breeding defects into dogs. Let me give you some examples. The King Charles Spaniel over here in the United Kingdom suffers from a condition where the brain is smaller than the skull. There is a very expensive operation that can fix that, but on the other hand, most people can't afford it, and your only recourse is to put the dog down because it's in pain all the time. Over on the right, we have the Best in Show in Westminster. This is a German Shepherd. Notice how horizontal the back is. It's not. Any wonder that American German Shepherds suffer from hip dysplasia as they get older. But this is not the worst. Then, of course, we have the bulldog, the English bulldog. This is what it used to look like. This is what it looks like today. If you've got a bulldog that looks like the one on the right, then it suffers from every known disease known to a dog. And there are attempts, in fact, now to breed that back into something that looks more like this. And indeed, we've had one of these bred-back bulldogs come and stay with us, an absolutely delightful animal. So it was once thought that if you understood wolf pack behavior, you understood dog pack behavior. You couldn't be more wrong, in fact. In a wolf pack, we have a dominance hierarchy. There is an alpha male, there is an alpha female. It is the alpha male and female that breed. This is a family unit. They do not accept strangers. They may accept a young dog, but that's about it. Somebody trying to join this wolf pack is more likely to be injured, driven away, or even killed. So dominance hierarchy, family unit, or that said, we can have large wolf packs. So what happens in a dog pack? It's a different hierarchy indeed. It's called a subordinates hierarchy, not dominance. Males follow it, according to the research. Females can go up and down in this hierarchy. They can hold a resource from a top-ranking dog. They can really mess up that ranking. In a dog pack, if you think you've identified the alpha dog because it's growling a lot and it's being mean, it's not. It's a middle-ranking dog trying to get its way up. So the top dogs and the bottom dogs, you're never going to see any problems from them because the top dogs know they're top dogs and the bottom dogs know they're not going to get anywhere, so they don't try anything. It's always the middle-ranking dogs. So a loose association of animals, it really depends on what a dog wants at a particular time. So let's say one of the top dogs wants a stick, he takes the stick. Let's say he doesn't want the stick, then he lets another dog take it. So it just depends on the context. There does seem to be an age factor. There is no size factor whatsoever. And the ones that can get away with murder happen to be puppies. If they're less than 4 months old, then the big dogs will cut them some slack. But the minute they get over that, they will start to be disciplined. So very different in a dog pack. Again, if we compare wolf with dog behavior, so pet dogs will cooperate a little bit, but not much. So in this picture here, we see 2 wolf dogs cooperating to fulfill a task. They're going to get a reward if they do this. Here we see 2 dogs also trying to cooperate. Ha ha, there's one. The other one's over here somewhere having a sniff and couldn't care less because they tend to let us do the work for them. This is Tristan. Tristan is a top dog. The way he's lying tells me he's a top dog, and I know what you're saying. Tristan's lying here. This is in our house. You're saying he's all alone. It's rubbish. He's not a top dog. But of course, that's the blow-up of that picture. And all these other animals here know what he is. They respect him. He's lying in a very vulnerable position with his belly exposed, but nobody's going to mess around with Tristan. He's an American Catahoula, as is this dog here. But the difference between the two dogs of the same breed is Tristan is a top dog, and the other one was scared of his shadow when he first came to stay with us, but improved with time. So yes, we have top dogs as well. Now, humans versus dogs. We are not dogs on two legs. Dogs don't see us as dogs. Don't pretend to be a dog if you're trying to train a dog. Don't pretend to be an assertive dog, rolling your dog over into a submissive position and biting him with your hand. Your dog thinks you're absolutely insane. So don't do that. It just doesn't work. But out of some of this training techniques that some people promote comes dominance theory. It's an old theory. It's been outmoded. So some of the things that come out of dominance theory are here. You don't allow a dog to eat before you. You don't allow a dog to go through a doorway before you, or go on the furniture, or to look in your eye, or you to look in its eye. So right in certain circumstances, we'll deal with that one, and so wrong in other circumstances, and we'll deal with that one. Now, this is not to say that dogs don't like rules. They absolutely do like rules, and they're very situational. You can have a set of rules in one room that are completely different from a set of rules in another room. The rules can be different from your house to your parents' house or your children's house, and as long as you're consistent, your dog will be completely happy with that and will follow those rules. But the key is consistency. So here are some dog rules. They're a bit tongue-in-cheek. We do see examples of this at Area K9. I'll go through them. So if I like it, it's mine. Here's one. If it's in my mouth, it's mine. You can clearly see that that dog would like what River's got there. Here's the tug of war down there. There's a branch between the Golden Retriever and the Great Dane, umpired by a Border Collie. If I can take it from you, it's mine. Who gets the branch? Come on, people. Who? I can't hear you, people. The alpha dog. Ah, ha, 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 ha. Remember what I said? It changes with the situation. Who thinks the Great Dane got it? No hands go up. Who thinks the Golden Retriever got it? A few hands go up. Who think the Border Collie got it? About the same number of hands go up. Border Collie got it. And the rest of you who didn't put your hands up, talk about non-committal. So, if I saw it first, it's mine. Yes, we see that when we throw something for a dog. If you're playing with something and you put it down, it becomes mine. We see that on a regular basis. But I like this last rule. If it's broken, it's yours. I said it was tongue-in-cheek. Right, understanding your dog. For those of you that are familiar with dogs, I think you'll all agree without doubt that they have these 6 basic emotions: happiness, sadness, fear, and anxiety, anger, and love. But, I say but, there is one breed that doesn't seem to have one of these emotions. That is fear. I'm holding it. It's the teacup Yorkshire Terrier. No, this emotion is replaced by a different emotion, and this emotion seems to be death wish. Have you ever seen the way these small dogs launch themselves into the mouth of something that could have them for breakfast? They're insane. But anyway, a couple others I want to go through. So this one, we really need to deal with this one. If there's anybody in this audience that thinks dogs feel guilt, you are completely wrong. Dogs do not feel guilt. Yes, I know. You come home, there's something on the floor there. Spot, what did you do? What's that on the floor there? What'd you do? Spot's going, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I'm sorry. You think he's guilty. He's not. He's reacting to you right now because you're angry. He knows you're angry. He knows what comes next isn't pleasant because you did it before. They remember these things. Guilt, no. And I'll explain why there's no guilt a little bit later when I get to memory. Jealousy, this used to be different, but there is in fact now scientific evidence that dogs feel jealousy, and I see that all the time in the pack. If I give affection to a dog, Hi, you're a good dog. They're all around me. They all want some. Then there's inequity. Dogs and wolves, for that matter, know the quality and the amount of the treat you give to your dog. It doesn't have to be food. It could be an emotional reward. They know the difference. But if you're a multi-dog household, your dogs will forgive you if you're being unfair to one of them, if you're giving more to the other one. Now, for those of you who own wolves, they hold a grudge. So be careful. Dogs don't. They'll forgive you. Grief, really different amongst different dogs. I don't have time to tell you some of the wonderful stories we've seen with grief, but this is one of the most famous stories of grief with a dog. This is Hachiko. And with us and dogs, it varies how they show their grief. Sometimes they can be very sad, sometimes they show no emotion whatsoever, and other times they can actually be pleased. So here, over on the left, we have basic emotions that build into a human as a function of age on the bottom. So this is about 2.5 years of age. And over on the right here, we have some higher emotions that get built into the child as the child gets older. Where that line is in the middle is where the dog's emotional stops. So everything on the left, yes, they develop. That's the 6 basic emotions we already talked about. Everything over on the right, no, it never comes in. They're just not that sophisticated to develop those higher emotions. It was once thought that 1 dog year was the equivalent of 7 human years. You know, your dog's 2 years old, so that's the same as a 14-year-old child. Not true. It varies with size. Let me show you an example. So a dog that's about 100 years old, if they're small, that's anywhere from 1 to 20 pounds, they may live up to 21 years of age. If they're medium, which is 20 to 50 pounds, they may live up to about 19 years of age. If they're large, which is 50 to 90 pounds, they may live up to about 16 years of age. But if they're the extra large dog, like a Great Dane or a St. Bernard, they are really pushing it when they get to 13 years of age. Is it any wonder that most of these extra large dogs often don't make 10 years of age? So the bigger the dog is, the shorter the lifespan, unfortunately. Sight, once thought that they saw in black and white. No, not true. They have color cones, but they don't have as many color cones as we do. They have 2. So this is the spectrum over on the left. So the dog spectrum is on the top panel. You can see that red is mostly missing from the dog's spectrum. This is the human spectrum down below. They detect movement much, much better than we do, anywhere from 10 to 20 times more effective in detecting movement. And they see the world differently. So here's an example of how they see. So here's the red ball in the green grass. It's very clear to you when you throw it. You can see it when it stops. However, when you throw it for your dog bounds after it and it stops in the grass and they stop following it and they start to go into a search pattern because they can't see it anymore. Because this is what the dog sees. The red ball and the green grass are almost the same color to them. So when it's not moving, they don't necessarily know where it goes, especially if it bounced to the side as it landed. Depending on the muzzle shape, so short-muzzled dogs are like humans. They've got peripheral vision about like this. I can't bend my arms around to 270 degrees. That's the sight scent hound dogs, dogs with longer muzzles. They can see almost behind them, hard to sneak up on them. So it really depends on the muzzle shape. Now, this is when you should look into the eyes of your dog. So when you know a dog well, it's your dog or it's your children's dog or your parents' dog, one that you're very familiar with, when you look into that dog's eyes and that dog looks at you, the oxytocin level in both you and the dog rises. So this is a pleasurable experience for both of you. This is not true for wolves. This doesn't work for wolves, so don't try that if you're a wolf owner. But if you're a dog owner, it really is very good. I mean, who could resist those eyes? This is also believed to be a similar process to how mothers bond with their children. So it increases the affiliative bond between you and your dog when you do this. So go home, grab your dog, have a good stare. It'll do you both good. The other thing, too, is their flicker fusion rate. So to watch a moving picture, We need about 24 frames per second to see a moving picture when stills are shown. They need something faster. They need something anywhere between 70 to 80 frames per second to see a moving picture when something is projected. So things look different to dogs than to us. This is a high definition TV, and the dog there is watching TV. We found that, this is 2017, we found that dogs are actually trying to use facial expressions when communicating with their owners. So if you're looking at your dog and actually having a conversation with your dog as opposed to just talking off in the corner, your dog will try and use facial expressions to enhance the communication between you and the dog. Taste, how do dogs taste? Well, not as well as we do. We have about 9,000 taste buds. They've only got about 1,700 taste buds. Taste is not important to dogs. They do have the same 5 basic tastes as we do. Some of the receptors are tuned a little bit better for the foods that they eat, which is primarily meat and fat materials. But some of them don't like bitter, and you can buy a product like the one shown on the left to try and discourage biting. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It really depends on the individual dog. No, the most sensitive thing that dogs use is their sense of smell to give them information about their food, because their sense of smell is absolutely amazing. Anywhere from 10 to 100,000 times more sensitive than our own. Part of the reason is this, the vomeronasal organ, which we don't quite understand, but it's thought it's maybe used for sensing pheromones. You'll see a dog filling this when he's standing or sitting and facing the wind and the nose is twitching. He's filling that organ. And of course, the other reason is, compared to ourselves, this is the olfactory bulb here in the dog's brain. There's the olfactory bulb there in the human brain. Relative to brain size, that decoding section of the brain is 40 times bigger in the dog than it is in ourselves. So they've got 300 million sensory connections as opposed to ours of 6 million. The other interesting thing about dogs is the 2 nostrils are independent. So they've actually got a directional sense on smell depending on how much is coming in to one nostril or the other. So sensitive that if they're trained to a particular odor, they could detect it up to 100 meters away if the wind is blowing towards them. If they're walking in a room that's just got still air, think the customs hall when you're trying to smuggle something back home. If he comes within 1.5 to 2.5 meters of your bag, you're sunk. They know it's in there. That's how sensitive their smell is. So that being said, having told you how sensitive their smell is, why do they do that? That's part of the greeting ritual. That's how dogs do greet each other. They are getting information from the anal glands and other things too. But there we go. Hearing, much better than ours, of course. They have different ear shapes, some of which encourage them to use their ears in sort of a radar fashion. Some of the breeds that we've bred, unfortunately, like the Basset there, it's only good for hang gliding. Their hearing, this is their auditory range here, both the cat and the dog. This is the ultrasound region here. So there's our auditory field, anywhere from 20 to 20,000 hertz or cycles per second. Dogs will double that, which is why those dog whistles are supposed to work, because they go up into that. They have 6 gates of motion. We only have 2. These are the gates, and actually within the canter, there's 2 types of canter. There's the classical and the rotary. The classical is what horses do, dogs do the other one, and then depending on the dog, if it's a sight scent hound, a running animal, it may have a double extension gallop as opposed to a single extension gallop. Let me summarize those for you in this little animation. So this is the walk, and this is also the foot pattern on the ground as they're walking along. This is the amble. Amble and pace are transitory, going up to trot. They're hard to spot when you're looking at your dog. So that's the other pace. It's going a little bit faster. And then we have trot, which is easy to spot, of course. And that will go up to the canter. It allows the dog to turn very sharply when they're using this form of canter as opposed to what horses do. And then this is a gallop where all 4 paws are off the ground at some point. And then we'll compare all 6 so that you can see them as a comparison on that animation. So that's how they move. Hot dogs, they feel nice and warm when you cuddle them. Yes, they are hot dogs because their body temperature is higher than ours, not by very much, but you can see there, I've given the figures up on that slide of how warm they are compared to ourselves. It's a myth to touch the dog's nose to try and figure out whether it's got a healthy temperature or not. No, if you actually want to measure the dog's temperature, you take that thermometer and you put it in a place that you wouldn't really want to put anything. But that's what you have to do. Heat, of course, they can get sunburned. If you've got a dog with short hair, just like us, out in the sun, they can get sunburned. So you've got to provide shade for your dog if your dog is living outside. This is a sunburned dog. That's not a Photoshop. Clothing, I had to put this in. This is real. This is not fake. This is coyote armor to prevent dogs that, for example, live in Nevada when they go out to prevent coyotes from eating them. This was actually given to me on the last voyage by that dog's owner. And he's also wearing little booties to prevent the hot pavement burning their paws. Pointing, we point like this. Well, most of us do. Some people point with their lips, as shown in the picture there. Dogs don't understand this, because dogs point like the German short-haired pointer does on that slide. So if you want to point to your dog and get them to understand it, you've got to train it. And it's not difficult to do, but just don't assume they understand what pointing is. Memory, now this is very important, and this is why guilt doesn't work. Their short-term memory and associating a behavior with an event is very small. It's anywhere from 10 to 70 seconds. Now that's a half-life. That means at that 10 to 70 seconds, there's a 50% chance of a dog associating an event with a behavior. So if they've got a really short-term memory, 10 seconds, and forget it. That was there an hour ago. They've got no chance whatsoever of associating why you're upset with that event. They live in the now. If you want to train a dog to either encourage a behavior or discourage a behavior, then your reaction really needs to be very quick. Recommended within a second or half a second. Then you've got a good chance of associating what you're trying to say to the dog with the behavior, to either encourage or discourage that behavior. So, living in the now. I'm a dog. I'm looking at my wife down there. I'm sensing her smell, I'm listening to what she's saying, I'm watching what she's doing, and that's my world right now. Until I hear a squirrel over here, which is far more interesting than my wife. Whoops. No, you're still more interesting, dear. And I've forgotten all about her, because the squirrel's more interesting. Now, long-term memory, fantastic. Absolutely wonderful. If you spend any quality time with a dog, they will remember you for the rest of their lives, which is why, of course, they're always so happy to see you when you come back from vacation. But they're not thinking about you while you're away. Some recent work, too. We have two types of memory, semantic and episodic. Semantic is when you're, say, trying to learn a language. Episodic is, say, when you're trying to remember what you bought at the supermarket yesterday. Dogs also have two types of memory like this, which is interesting, as they're so different from us, yet their brain is also so similar to us in that respect. This is another report that came out quite recently, just 2 years ago, September 2017, showing that when you're training a dog, if they're a good sleeper, that training actually takes hold better. So if your dog sleeps well, you do some training before, let the dog sleep, and that training will take hold faster than if you didn't let the dog sleep. How smart are dogs? Over here is the top 10, over here is the bottom 10. This list is according to Professor Stanley Coven from UBC, University of British Columbia. How is this list constructed? These dogs over here will obey a command first time 95% of the time, or they will learn a new command in less than 5 repetitions. On the other side, those dogs will obey a command first time 25% of the time, and they will learn a new command anywhere from 80 to 100 repetitions, or maybe never. Always number one, no matter what the scale is the Border Collie. We think they're a dog plus, a step up on the evolutionary ladder. Our two dogs are the Shetland sheepdogs down here. They're number 7 on this list. So how does a dog's brain work? It's tongue-in-cheek, but let me go through one pathway. Object, can you eat it? Yes. Was it good? No. Puke it out, re-eat it, done. The variation we see in area K9 is object, can you eat it? Yes. Was it good? No. Puke it out. Someone else eats it. Done. Said it was tongue-in-cheek. Can they speak? No. Their voice box is such that they cannot speak, but they do make sounds, and some of those sounds are associated with meanings. But this is just one very small part of their communication toolbox. Functional MRI has been used to try and understand how dogs think. The first part of this project some years ago was to get the dog to go into the machine with no anesthetics at all, being fully awake and standing still in the MRI. That's been done. There's now quite a bit of results coming out from this. Here's one example. This Boston here is smelling sweat on the Q-tip. The smell center is activated for somebody else's sweat. Over on the right, though, it's the owner's sweat. And the reward center has been activated there. So that tells you that dog is happy to smell the owner's perspiration. Takeaway message, go home. When you get your dog, stuff it up your armpit, let it have a good smell, and that's pleasurable. Well, that's what that said. This is another study that came out of functional MRI. The dog there that was used in this study, as was other dogs. The important finding here is that dogs often would rather get a belly rub than a food treat, which is great news for you, because when you're out with your dog and you forgot your treats, and I hope you don't use them all the time, then if you want to reward your dog, you are there. You can give that reward. You can give the emotional feedback that the dog wants, and you should give to praise the dog for having done something good. So you always have you with you, which is great. Again, referring to Professor Karen, he says the average dog will know about 160 words. Some of these words you will have trained in. Some of them they will have learned by themselves, which may not be such a good thing. Let me show you the record holder. This is Chaser. Chaser's owner died last year, and Chaser can identify over 1,000 objects by name, can retrieve those objects by name. Now, Dr. Pillar worked very hard on getting Chaser to do that. Chaser is, of course, a border collie and is still with us today. I believe Chaser is now owned by his daughter. Here's Chaser with some of the objects that Chaser knows. And here, too, Chaser was on 60 Minutes. There's Chaser with his owner. And Chaser, in fact, is so smart that Chaser could identify a new object simply by inference, having never seen that object before. So in the top panel, the owner's speaking to the dog, and for those who can't quite make it out, I'll read it out. Okay, Ginger, I've had it. Stay out of the garbage. Understand, Ginger? Stay out of the garbage or else. And of course, the dog understands the emotion there absolutely clearly, but unless you've trained any of those words in, the only thing that Ginger heard was Ginger's name and didn't know anything else. So don't think they understand everything, no. Again, another study, this group of dogs was studied in functional MRI. I'll cut to the chase of this. They basically looked at different sounds, both dog and human sounds. The outcome of this particular work was to tell you that the dog's brain, rather like our own, the left side of the brain is interpreting the meaning, the right side of the brain is interpreting the emotion. If you want to deliver a phrase that you think the dog understands, then both the left and the right have to match. The meaning has to correspond with the emotion that you're trying to put over. Otherwise, you'll just do nothing but confuse your dog. So how do dogs speak to each other? There's a whole host of different things that dogs are using to communicate. This is Jersey. Jersey's a chocolate lab Doberman mix, and she's not moving in this picture, but in reality, all of these things are moving. All of those things are conveying meaning to another dog, and this takes place in fractions of a second. It's very fast. So if you want to learn dog speak, know that all of those different things you saw flashing on the last slide, they either subtract or add to each other depending on the dog's holistic posture. And if you want to learn it yourself, of course, just concentrate on one thing at a time and then build in other signals to try and figure out what's going. But just remember these things. go together in a holistic fashion. So a stiff-legged dog leaning forward is being assertive. If the hair's bristling up on the dog, it's showing a level of threat. If it's just on the shoulders, it's minor threat. If it's all the way down the dog's body, it's showing more rising aggression. It's telling the other dogs to stay clear. And of course, in this picture on the lower right, we've got active submission. There's some other signals in that picture too, like the paw lift. This is Patch. Patch has just arrived at area canine, and you can see the hair's up all the way and the tail is high as Patch can raise it. He's basically telling Bentley there, I'm feeling very uncomfortable, leave me alone. And in about 10 to 20 seconds later, that's all down and Patch is feeling okay. Then there's the ears. If they're up and forward, they're alert and interested. If they're very forward, it could show rising aggression. It just depends. If they're pulled back flat, I'm sure some of you will say, well, that's because they're afraid. Yes, that can be true too. That can also lead to aggression if you corner that kind of dog. But if it's your dog, ears back flat, often just means it's respect. So they're not afraid of you. They respect you, of course, because you're their God. Eyes, this is when you do not stare into a dog's eyes. You don't know this dog. This is a dominant dog. If you stare into that dog's eyes, that's a challenge. And that can lead to an unfortunate consequence. You may find this surprising, but they have eyebrows and they have muscles there and they use eyebrows in the same way as we do. Kind of hard to spot sometimes. Blinking is something, there are two ways you can communicate directly with your dog in dog. That's one of them. Blinking, it's a pacifying gesture. The other one is yawning, same thing. It's a calming gesture. The mouth, lovely smile here. I think they learnt it from us over the thousands of years. If it's simply a closed mouth, they're paying attention or they're just, interested. Of course, we're concerned in this situation here when we've got some teeth showing. Where the lip becomes more and more C-shaped, then the aggression is getting worse and worse, and that could lead to an attack. Sound, a limited tool in the toolbox. These are some of the sounds. We hear this one here. There's a dog that lives over the road from us, and periodically it must be left out alone, and we hear this bark, bark, bark. It's a lonely dog. Our dogs basically ignore him, unfortunately, and he can't come and play. And you see the other ones there too. So that's a limited range. Now this is complicated. The tail is complicated because all of the signals of the tail depend on the rest position of the dog. It's not necessarily breed specific, it's individual specific. Yes, Huskies mostly have their tail up high. Yes, Greyhounds mostly have their tail down. We have 2 Shetland sheepdogs, and the tail positions between those two dogs is different in their rest position. So everything is relative to that rest position. And so the intensity of the wag, where it is high or low, is giving you information about the emotional state of your dog. Also, the direction of the wag is important. So when it's wagging more to the right, the dog is interested, wants to approach. When it's wagging more to the left, it's the opposite. In fact, that dog may want to back away, even though the tail is wagging. So a wagging tail is not always a good thing. It just depends how it's going. They don't all speak dog in the same way. This is an example. Up there, the King Charles Cavalier is more puppy-like as opposed to the Husky down the bottom, which is more adult-like. So don't assume dogs all speak the same dialect. They don't. I just throw this up to let you know that human food is not necessarily good for dogs. All dogs assume they're lactose intolerant. Don't give them any dairy products. The other one I just want to highlight here is cooked chicken bones. That's very bad for dogs. Raw chicken bones, on the other hand, are fine. And there's other foods too. Now, there are 3 case studies I want to go through. The first one is 2 Labradors with food in between them. Who is going to get the food? There's the food, there's the labs. They're looking at each other. Both tails are high, showing they're in an assertive position. This one took a little bit of a step forward. They are staring at each other at this point. Another step forward. What's this one going to do? Because this one's advancing. We're sitting down. Does sitting down meaning I'm claiming things? You may ask. Now notice the eye line. They're not looking at each other anymore. The eye lines are crossing. No longer looking at each other. Ears are back. This one took a step forward again. This one, although it's a bad angle, is showing teeth. And there's sound with this video, but we can't hear any growling that may be associated with that. This one is now lowering its head, saying, "I'm no threat," takes another step forward. Eye line up there somewhere. Watch the mouth here, because there's going to be a lip lick at some point, which is a very telling feature. Looking over slightly, head still lower, ears back, tail high. Can't tell where that tail position is when we're sitting. Shift to the right and a lip lick. That was encouraging. We're moving forward. We're getting close to what I call the cunning move. Looking over. Now we're sitting down. We're both sitting down. A quick glance over to see what this one's doing. Ears still back. Here comes the cunning move. We're going to lie down. And as we lie down, we go, "Oh, there's food there. Let me sample it." This one moved over to the right, and will get up and go away, having lost that competition of wills. Next case study, an assertive dog joining our pack. Bentley's coming out. There's Bentley. Simon thinks he's a top dog. He's not. Watch Bentley's behavior to the other dogs. He's basically ignoring them. His tail remains high. He lets other dogs come over to him, and he's trying to assert himself. And what's Bentley's reaction to Simon, who's much, much bigger, of course, is to completely ignore him and just maintain his confident posture. That's Maverick, a King Shepherd. He's absolutely enormous as well. When he first came to us, he was totally scared of pretty much everything. He's much better now. And Bentley's just letting dogs come up to him, have a sniff. He's not showing very much interest in them, just a little bit. There's a brief acknowledgement. And this is how an assertive dog joins our pack at Area K9. And that's it. He's integrated. Now the next one is Angel. Angel is a German Shepherd Husky cross. She's white. There she is, and as you can see, her body posture is very hesitant. As she comes out, you're going to notice she keeps looking at Luda all the time. Luda is a place of safety and security, so she's looking for direction from Luda all of the time until she gets a little bit more comfortable. Simon's still there. There's Tristan. He is also, well, he is a top dog. He's going to assert himself in a minute. Luda will redirect him. Notice, again, as I said, keeps glancing over. Ears back, tail down. Angel is definitely not comfortable at the moment. Luda just redirected Tristan from his barking, and he has quieted. Now the tails come up, the ears are coming forward a little bit. She's letting dogs come and sniff her. And that was it, couple of sniffs, and she says, "Yeah, okay, I'm good. Thanks very much. I'm going back inside." So that's the opposite of Bentley coming in. Now, we cause difficulties to dogs through breeding. The ears, that Basset can't use ears. We crop tails, we crop ears, and accidents happen where a dog loses a leg so they can't use their body postures. Displacement. Displacement is something that happens when the dog is slightly stressed. And this is loyal shaking when having a bath. The shaking off is a very common displacement behavior that we see. And basically, a dog is able to shake off stress. So if they have a little bit of rough play, you'll see one stop, shake it off, go back to play. They may both stop and shake it off. And there's other behaviors here too. If it gets a little bit worse, stress with fear, then we have some other behaviors here. And this is the most common one we see from dogs that are more anxious than others. We see the drooling and the whining. And that goes away as they get more confident. How do you communicate to a dog? Well, you've got to do it through training. They don't speak English, so you've got to teach English as a second language. But you also have another thing too. You're much smarter than they are, so you can understand their signals. Speaking dog, there's really only two ways to do it. As I said, blinking and yawning, so you've got to continue. The other thing that you can do to get your dog's attention is be excited when you talk to your dog. They pay more attention to you. And it also strengthens the affiliative bond. So, if you pretend your dog's a baby, you know how you speak to babies. It's the same sort of principle. You get their attention, you keep their attention. And that's Definitely something you should do when you praise your dog. Be excited. Are you ever done? No. You're never done socializing your dog. You should always be taking your dog to new and interesting places, and you should be reinforcing the training wherever you can, because each situation to the dog is different. Just because I taught my dog to sit in the living room doesn't mean to say it's going to work at the curbside. That's a different situation. Keep reinforcing the training wherever you go. Service dogs, this is Winston on the Equinox in 2017. He's a hearing aid assistance dog. If you ever see a service dog, what do? You pretend he's not there. Don't touch him. Unless the handler says, yes, come and say hello, pretend the dog's not there. Working dog, best thing you can do for the dog. This is the zero dog. This is Louis. Louis is not a zero dog, but he's sitting down, because that's what zero dogs do. All dogs, as I said to you, communicate all of the time with these signals that you see here, but the zero dog doesn't. The only thing moving in the zero dog is the eyes. If you ever meet a dog like this, go away. You don't know what's going to happen. It could explode on you. Just go away quietly. This is a statue in Skagway. We were there. First saw this, I thought, oh, this miner, he's depressed and he's got his dog. And then I looked at the dog, and the dog's telling a different story. Look at the dog. Hunchback, submissive, ears back, respect, looking for direction at his owner, poor lift, uncertain, something's wrong. So then we looked up the interpretation of this in the local jewelry store, and this miner had been turned back by the Canadian Mounted Police because he didn't have the 1 ton of supplies, and his whole venture was down the toilet. So yes, he's not just tired, he's completely ruined, and the dog senses this. Here's some interesting reading for you if you're so inclined. This is Stanley Koren's book where I got the top 10 and the bottom 10. This is a pictorial encyclopedia from Brenda Aloff. Shows you dog conformation, interprets it, tells you what the dog's body posture is communicating to other dogs. A very useful one. But the one I like most of all, of course, is anything written by Dr. Dunbar. This is a fairly short book. It's the best training book for its size I've seen anywhere. You can pick it up on Amazon or eBay for cheaper. On our website, we've got these 2 books written by Dr. Dunbar. They're completely free. So don't be misled by the titles after you get your puppy, before you get your puppy. Great training tips in both of them. They're PDF files of about 120 pages each. Help yourself, please. areacanine.com. Last thing I want to say was this fantastic study that was done not so long ago, looking at the health effects of having a dog. Over 3 million people were studied in this, so a huge study. Bottom line, what happened? Well, compared with no dogs at home, if you lived alone and you had a dog at home, then your risk of cardiovascular death was 36% lower, your risk of death was 33% lower, and your risk of heart attack was 11% lower if you lived alone and you had a dog. For multi-person households, the risks didn't go down as much. Cardiovascular disease, 15% lower, risk of death, 11% lower, and no change in heart attack. So, bottom line, you want to stay healthy, get a dog. And that brings me to the end of Dog Talk. So, reiterate, you see me or my wife around, you have questions about dogs, or in my case, anything, please stop us. If we're dancing, wait till the dance is finished. But otherwise, we're happy to talk to you at any point over the next 14 days. So, thank you very much, and I'll just remind you